Our Airbnb host the Sicario. I'm keeping some of these details vague because I seriously don't want the hosts to find out that I published this story. I don't think they would approve. I hope that is alright, and I'll try to still make it as comprehensive as possible. I spent a year studying in Mexico recently, and as you do on exchange, I tried to travel as much as I could. Between the semesters there is a big break, and me and my buddy that I spent the most time with during the exchange decided we'd go on a longer backpacking trip through Mexico together. We had a rough plan on where to go and what we wanted to see, but we hadn't even booked our flight back yet, nor were we sure from where we would take it from. We wanted to keep it flexible. We had an amazing time, and a few days before our trip ended, we finally decided we would take our flight from a city that was close and had really cheap flights, but the city itself didn't really have anything to offer. Then on Airbnb we found a room very close to the airport in a house with a pool, and we thought we'd just treat ourselves to a relaxed pool day at the end of the trip. It turned out that the hosts were a family. The husband was Mexican, and the wife was from Europe and could even speak our native language, so we arranged that we would take a bus to the airport and that they would pick us up from there. When we finally arrived at the city it was already dark, and the bus driver refused to drive us to the airport, since it was not directly on his route, so he just dropped us off on the highway. That was already a pretty shitty situation to begin with, standing with our backpacks at the side of the road in the middle of nowhere in a not-so-safe city in Mexico, but I called the hosts and sent them our GPS location, and they say no problem, they will come and get us. So the husband came to pick us up, and it was a very uncomfortable situation getting into the car with a stranger in the night in the middle of nowhere. It also didn't help that the guy looked like Danny Trejo without a mustache, and as I tried to make small talk with him, he only gave monosyllabic answers or straight out ignored me. Well, he's just not a big talker, I thought, and hoped we would arrive soon. Looking back, I can see a million red flags, but for some reason, at that time we just didn't see them. Either we were too tired, or to be honest, we didn't really have any other choice than going along anyway, so. But yes. We arrive, and that should have immediately set alarms off. We were in the middle of fucking nowhere. There were fields with sheep and goats around, and all of a sudden, a gravel road branches off from the paved road, and along that gravel road there are about 6 huge mansions. All with 2 meters walls around them, topped with NATO fence, huge gates, and at least 2 gigantic guard dogs per house. When we entered the house, we were greeted by the wife, a bubbly middle-aged woman, that was very talkative but pleasant. She had actually cooked dinner for us, and we ate while exchanging small talk. The husband just sat at the table not saying a single word. After dinner, we more or less went directly to bed because it had gotten late, and we were tired from a long day. The next morning we saw that the weather was not that good, so we decided to go into the town and just see the few touristy things it had to offer instead of spending it at the pool. When we came back it was already dark, but we decided to jump into the pool anyways to cool off because it was very hot and humid. The wife joined us, and at some point, my friend made the mistake to ask how they were able to afford such a house. It didn't really match the price range of the jobs they were telling us that they were doing, and she deflected a bit and added that her husband was very handy because he had grown up in the streets and basically built the house himself. We realized that it maybe was not the best topic and broke the conversation off. That was the last day of our trip, and we had our flight back home early the next morning. We still had some we'd left that we had bought on the trip, and we thought it would be nice to smoke one out since it was our last night. But as this was a family home and they had kids around, we thought it would be better to speak to our hosts if they would mind. So later in the evening we asked the wife if it would be okay if we smoked on the terrace, which for some reason she found quite amusing and started laughing. She shouted to her husband, who was lying on the couch watching TV, "My love, the boys ask if it would be okay if they smoke some weed, what do you think?" And he just laughed but didn't give an answer. We looked at her with a dumbfounded expression, and she told us sure, just go ahead. So we went to the terrace and started smoking our joint. Later they joined us and we just had a chat. And this is where things got really fucked up. For some reason, they start asking all sorts of questions about the weed, where we got it, how much it was, who we got it from, and how much we would have to pay for that back in Europe. They just seemed way too interested in the weed, and at one point, the wife just nonchalantly revealed to us, yes, we thought about doing that as a source of income. Selling weed. But too many people die doing that, because the cartels don't like that. Actually, my husband used to kill people for doing that. I immediately felt sober. Did she just say? And as if he read my mind, her husband added, yes, when I was about 16, I killed a lot of people for the cartel for money. And he said it in a tone as if he just said he used to mow lawns when he was a teenager. I still thought I must have misunderstood, so I texted my friend who was sitting across the table from me, trying not to make eye contact, because I knew we would freak each other out. He confirmed that I had indeed understood right. We discuss what we should do and agree that there's no immediate threat and that we just should stay. We don't have anywhere else to go anyways, and it is already late. But things got even crazier. We tried to keep our composure and not completely freak out while still making conversation with our hosts. A few minutes later though, the husband got up and went inside to get something. And he came back with a literal kilo of weed. Pressed into a brick. He proceeded to break bits off the brick and roll them into a joint that would probably have knocked out Snoop Dogg. It was about the size of my thumb, and I guess it had about 2 grams of weed in there. Of course, he offered the joint to us, but we politely declined, saying that we were already pretty stoned. He seemed a little offended, but fortunately, he bought our excuse. But it got even worse. A few minutes later we hear a couple of loud bangs. The wife became a bit uneasy and asked, "What was that?" To which he answered calmly 9mm to confirm my suspicion that had indeed been shots. I would say it was around 7 or something shots, fired pretty quickly after each other. The wife got nervous and asked if we should maybe go inside, and what do you think they are shooting at, in the air? At cows? At people? But he just shrugged it off and we stayed outside. Again a few minutes later, there were more shots, this time even closer. The wife got even more upset and asked again, "Should we maybe go inside? What do you think are they shooting at, should we go inside?" And I think I will never forget when he answered in the calmest way imaginable, "No, everything's okay, I didn't hear any screams yet." I don't know why, but the way he just calmly said that freaked me the fuck out and is still making my heart beat whenever I think about it. After that we quickly excused ourselves and went to our room. When we finally could talk we basically both lost it and panicked. What the fuck were we supposed to do? We are locked into a house with a contract killer in the middle of absolutely fucking nowhere and people are shooting outside. We decided it was probably our best bet to stay, because we thought, well, we are his guests, he is not going to harm us. Hopefully. And it's better to have walls and dogs, and a serial killer, in between us and people shooting around. So we barricaded ourselves in the room and didn't sleep a second until the morning, when we noped the fuck out of there and went to the airport. I was never so happy to be patted down at security my whole life.